Good evening, afternoon or morning. Movie Cat is at the microphone, and today I will tell you about the psychological thriller, Regression.
Angela, I know something terrible happened to you.
In order not to lose this channel, I recommend to subscribe. In a small provincial town in the northern United States, auto mechanic John Gray arrives at the police station. The captain called John because his 17-year-old daughter, Angela, had been living in the church for several days, and the local priest had forwarded a sexual harassment complaint from her to the police. The captain has known John for a long time, and apart from drunkenness, there were no other crimes from him, and therefore the policeman decides not to rush to conclusions and entrusts the investigation to his best detective, Bruce Kenner. During the interrogation, John, on the one hand, cannot remember that he has ever molested his daughter, and on the other hand, he admits that Angela would never lie, and if the girl says, probably so it was. Detective Kenner and another cop, Nesbitt, who is an old friend of the Gray family, drive to their house. The place is poor and in disarray. Only Angela's grandmother and 10 of her cats live here now. She does not believe that her son could sexually harass her granddaughter and wants herself to talk to Angela. However, the priest gently refuses her, saying that Angela needs to be alone. Bruce wants to inspect the girl's room, and his partner Nesbitt suggests that this is the last door upstairs. In the room, the detective sees a family photo. Angela's mother unfortunately died in a car accident, and brother Roy left 2 years ago, and Bruce suggests that probably he could have run away from his father. On the way back, Bruce listens on the radio to a conspiracy program about satanic sects and their macabre rituals. Nesbitt asks to turn it off, and then, as part of the investigation, puts forward a theory that Angela is tired of living in poverty on the edge of the world and thus decided to break out. Bruce doesn't believe that a girl of 17 is ready to put her father in a jail in order to change her life. The detective's next step is to call a good psychologist for help. Professor Raines uses a metronome to hypnotize John, while the detective reads his daughter's letter about sexual harassment. Bruce reads it many times, paragraph by paragraph, for several hours. Suddenly, John sees what happened. His daughter is tied with a black rope to the bed, but he did not do it. Someone else ties her. John doesn't help Angela, instead he holds the movie camera. Suddenly, in the rapist, he recognizes Nesbitt. 3 minutes later, Bruce catches up with Nesbitt in the parking lot and files charges, bluffing that he has the photo. The policeman is very nervous and detective arrests him. Nesbitt, unlike the girl's father, is not going to confess to anything and even calls a lawyer, so to keep him for more than a day, evidence is needed. The detective and the psychologist go to the church to talk to Angela. Because the rope was black, Bruce assumes that the rape was a part of some kind of ritual. It is difficult for the girl to say what happened, but she nevertheless confirms Bruce's assumption about the second person in the room and points out, among dozens of men, probably unfamiliar to her, precisely to the family friend, Nesbitt. As Angela leaves, the priest talks about how she got into the church. A week ago, during the prayer, she sat, seemingly depressed, and then suddenly burst into violent tears. In that moment he suspected something was wrong and considered this feeling to be the voice of God. Later, when he inquired her, the girl told him about her father. A little later, the priest, who is especially horrified by satanic rituals, comes to the arrested John and asks why he branded his daughter with an inverted cross. Is it not to desecrate his church? Before leaving, the priest leaves a copy of Angela's letter, presumably so that John, rereading it over and over again, bothers himself to remember everything he did. In the meantime, information about possible occult rituals in the area quickly leaks out until the release of local news. At home, Bruce stumbles across another channel on a show about a best-selling book called In the Name of Satan, which tells about various terrible rituals and sacrifices of the past decade, probably made by real cults. The next day, the detective, impressed, asks to buy these books for the department in order to better study the issue. At a briefing, one of the young patrolmen doubts that the sects really made sacrifices, otherwise the FBI would have flocked here long ago. Bruce quickly shuts up the policeman, saying the FBI didn't show up because no one called them. Meanwhile, John's son, Roy Gray, was found. He lives in Pittsburgh, about 1,000 miles away. The detective and the psychologist go to talk to him. On the road, Bruce constantly listens to recordings of conversations with Angela and the professor disapproves of such moral violence against himself, since John in his last hypnosis session, among other things, said something about a black cat and someone in a hood. The detective asks John's son, Roy, about this in the first place. By the sounds of the metronome, the guy sees the events of many years ago, when he was still a child, how people in hoods make their way into his room and stand around the bed. Because of the white makeup, their faces cannot be distinguished. Returning to Minnesota, the psychologist sees an inconsistency, that Roy's events took place in his childhood, and his sister talks about harassment that began last year. However, Bruce considers such inaccuracies to be a side effect of hypnosis. The men agree on one thing: such a crowd in hoods cannot be brought into the house without the knowledge of the grandmother. The police are rummaging through the house in search of photographs, but so far to no avail. In the meantime, the captain brings the archival folder obtained from the FBI about the investigations of the Satan cult in these places. After the release of that very bestseller, threads and traces of occult organizations appeared everywhere. However, due to the complete lack of evidence, after a 7-year investigation, the FBI sent the materials to the archive. The detective comes to talk to Angela again. He asks the girl to confirm that she also saw people in hoods and her grandmother is involved in this. Bruce cheers Angela up by saying that those people are just scum and she is a good person who is stronger than them. Additionally, Bruce asks her to show the doctor the inverted cross carved by the Satanists on her. Angela gives up and tells about one of the cases, how one night her grandmother came to her with a strange smile, as if on drugs, and called the girl to her father's workshop. There were a lot of people in dark robes. Some of them were carried away by fornication in the corners, while others were tortured. There was an altar on which they put the baby, and then they began to stab him with knives and eat. They did such things more than once, and the bodies were buried on the ground of her father. The police come to look for evidence in the Gray's house once again. Only now they will check the workshop and begin to dig in the yard. Later, Angela arrives at the station and tells Bruce that the cult is watching her. They have such tactics to mix with the crowd and watch from there, or call the victim and remain silent on the phone. In such a way they threatens with death. The girl knows this from the stories of her mother, who did not die in a car accident. She was killed by the cult. Against the backdrop of emotions from this case, at night, Bruce has a realistic nightmare where sextons, led by an elderly woman, come to him. Suddenly, the detective hears a phone call. He picks up the phone, and there is silence. In the morning, Bruce arrives at the Gray's house. Unfortunately, no evidence confirming meetings of the satanic cult has yet been found. Behind the house at her mother's grave, Angela confesses to the detective how much she misses her. Then she suddenly kisses Bruce. Almost immediately, he pulls away and leaves. In the evening, somebody calls Bruce again and says nothing. Angela hangs up on the other side. Not knowing this, the detective is already overwhelmed with paranoia, and the next day, he is sure that literally every person in the city is following him. At the police station, the captain brings Bruce a doctor's report, which says that the inverted cross on Angela's body was applied quite recently, and most likely by herself. The detective does not believe in this and, in search of confirmation of his version, once again listens to the John's testimony. On the first tape, he notices that he interrupted John at the beginning of a sentence, and Bruce goes to the jail to find out what John was about to say. The accused, with great embarrassment, says that his son is a sodomite, which means that he, the father who raised him, is also a pervert. The detective can't believe it. He asks if John really took the blame for sexually abusing his daughter just because his son is gay. On the way home, Bruce notices on the billboard the same old woman who in his dream led the cult. It turns out that at least this enemy is not real, but invented by him. In the house, the detective is attacked by two masked men. Having fought them off with difficulty, Bruce takes both of them at gunpoint. The attackers take off their masks, and one of them is Nesbitt, and the second is his friend a policeman. Of course, they are not sectarians, but simply came to take revenge on Bruce, because although Nesbitt was released for lack of evidence, he was fired from police forever. Bruce does not understand only one thing, why Nesbitt, then in the parking lot, was so nervous if he was not a sectarian and did not abuse the girl. Nesbitt confesses that he slept with Angela consensually. However, he rejected her offer to run away together. Bruce drives to the church and tells Angela that the police have arrested the entire cult. Because Nesbitt gave names, Bruce reads from his notebook additional details that the arrested person told. For example, that Angela was pregnant because the cult wanted her to have a baby. And then was a ceremony where the cult performed an abortion on her. Angela nods through her tears, confirming that everything was exactly like that. Frustrated, Bruce tosses an empty notebook on the table. He confesses to the priest that he invented all these facts himself. Then he puts him out of the room to talk to the girl. Bruce tells Angela that she has played too much in her fantasies and manipulations and can no longer stop. Caught in a lie, Angela does not repent at all but threatens Bruce that she will tell everyone about their kiss. The case is solved and the captain in the bar says that Bruce did everything correctly. Meanwhile, on TV, reporters continue their pursuit of ghostly cultists. Now their main eyewitness is Angela. For some reason, the priest is next to her, although he knows for sure that she is lying. Bruce comes to the prison to see John, but John cannot believe that there are no sectarians because he remembers how he participated in this, and his mother and his son also remember something similar. The detective, having previously consulted with a psychologist, explains these were not memories, but fantasies, induced and inspired by the police and the media. This is a collective hysteria. The Gray family believed what the police made them believe, and the police believed what the Grays said, so they went around in circles. John now knows that he is not guilty, but decides to be punished anyway. With his confession, he wants to shield Angela, and he hopes that his daughter will notice such a sacrifice and forgive him for being a bad father. Thank you for watching. What is your favorite Emma Watson movie? Don't forget to press your thumbs up and please subscribe.